I guess if I check the background, should be coming on my headphones. This one? Okay, cool. Yeah, the music's there. You have this. Boom, 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 boom. You're live. Can I do social tags? It might be 18 plus. There you go. Okay. Oh my god, it still says I'm playing Baldur's Gate 3. How do I fix that on fucking Twitch? For some reason, the restream always says I'm playing Baldur's Gate 3. I'm almost certain I fixed that on Twitch like a while ago. Creator dashboard. Where it was like, now it should default over to just chatting. I'm like, sweet. Now it's gone back to Baldur's Gate. What a wonderful game of Baldur's Gate 3. Recording for the channel live, Baldur's Gate 3 edit stream. Hello, Ashley 12. Done. Okay, that's good. Chat's there in the middle. Hello. They hate Demon. Hello. Shadow Haunt Joker. Hello. Ashley 12. Hey, Ray. Hey, Mika. I'm, Meta, I didn't talk to you. I was talking to someone else. Go away now. Okay. Zvarian, hello. Cripple Moose, hello. We're gonna be recording live, don't worry. You guys are gonna be hearing like some background music stuff here in a second. I'm gonna be setting this up. So I'm gonna be using On Together to be doing keeping track of my work. You guys will see my little On Together avatar on the bottom, because I think it's actually like a really fun, cute way of keeping track of work as I continue to do it. I don't know if you guys have seen it or if you guys have used On Together before. On Together is like this little game you can get on Steam, and it's 110% what it is. It's just like a work app. It's like there's like a game to it, I guess, kind of. But for the most part, this is a working app. Like you set your avatar up. There's like games you could play, ways you could dress yourself up, but like it lets you keep track of like your how much things you need to like actually work on, things you need to build, and things like that. So, we're going to one get rid of all the fucking background sounds, and then two, um, we're going to. Oh, also, if you do have On Together, just as a note, if you have On Together, my thing is public. So if you find my server, you actually can be in the On Together with me. And you know, you can sit down next to me, which means you show up on stream. Ain't that just so cute? Ain't that just so cute? Aha. I don't want to be over there at the water because it makes noise. I'm gonna come over here where I can start up my thunderstorm and my fire sounds. Things that help me work. Where the fuck is the classroom? There it is. Okay, I'll stay here. Study. And where's my sound effects? My sound effects. There you are. We want thunderstorm sounds. I like thunderstorm sounds. And fire sounds. So that's what we're going with. I'm going to make it tiny. I'm going to make it so that you guys can see it. Is that too loud, you think? Is that too loud for... Looks like the thunderstorm may be a little bit too loud. Or the fire might be a little bit too loud. Bring that down. How's that? Here's McPasta Jr. The favorites to listen to? Yo, I appreciate it. Man, I wish I knew what happened to those guys. One day. One day they'll come back from the war. Okay, so that goes there, and then can I put this on screen? Application capture? Game capture? Game? Specific window. On Together? What if I did that? What do I get? Oh, that's not quite what I was shooting for. That game capture filter. No, I think I can do this as a blending option. If I did multiple? No, no, that's not it. Uh, it's additive. Yeah, there you are. So we'll put you there. Okay. So now there's the rain is going on, right? The rain's coming down here. Okay, that's that mic. So I could turn this mic up, and doesn't affect the other one, which is good. Okay, sounds good. Okay, so what I have for you guys today, I'm just gonna put myself right there. That's cute. Or I guess, yeah, I'll put myself right here, right over my face, right here. That's fine. No one person has done more for my sleep ever. Dude, thank you so much. I'm gonna be recording stories. I have a couple stories already in mind, so I have these here pulled open. Another building vanished by a magic toad wizard. Story titles. This one. We're gonna do a couple of them. Hopefully, I think I have 3, so we should have the stories ready to go for this week. Let me put them also on my board. Checklist. So today's ones are oh my god. There we go. Stories for today. So the first one is another building vanished. The next one is disappearance. We did that one. This one. Next round, I run a bar that serves drinks. One-of-a-kind drinks. The next one is... I thought my wife was suffering. So we have 3 of them lined up. I think this is actually going to be going from shortest to longest, too. So that's pretty good. Call another building, because I'm pretty sure this one's very short. Yeah, it is. Maybe I'll do this. If I do that one, and then do... Okay. So, once again, whenever I do record stories and stuff like that for YouTube, I cannot, I, of course, can't, like, respond to chat all the time. I can see chat, but I can't respond to chat. So, feel free to comment, and if I see something big, I will try to do something to respond to it. But until then, this is another building vanished. And happen again. Another building went missing in the middle of the night. 1 minute it's here, the next it's gone. Last night it was my buddy's daughter who went missing along with her entire apartment building. They'd come over that very day to shoot the shit over a couple of beers. She'd asked about apartment 426, and since it happened so close to her, I told her everything I knew about it. Understandably, I think what I told her really freaked her out. And I tried to change the subject, but she and her dad, they left not long after. That very night, while I was getting ready for bed, my old police chief called me. He knew I was close with her dad, so he figured he'd call me, let me know what happened. He asked if I wanted to be a part of the search. I agreed. I was there when they interviewed the neighbors in the surrounding area. They all reported the same thing. A dense fog rolled in, and the ground shook violently, like the most violent earthquake they'd ever felt, followed by a deafening horn like that of a train, and then nothing. Everything went back to normal and the world fell silent again, except once more an entire building had gone missing in mere moments. Everyone inside disappearing with it. And so we began the search. In much the same way as when Building 426 went missing, this time it wasn't long before something was found. 2 hikers had called and reported seeing a building deep in the woods, just off an established trail. So we went looking. We found it. There it was. Its address is on full display. Apartment 451. Nearly around 100 kilometers away from where it had stood. It had been a 10-story building. But only the first 2 floors were currently there. I was one of the first to go in, and the second I did, I could tell something was wrong. I mean, nothing so far had given me any doubt as to what I was doing. It had all been so procedural. But the second I stepped in there, the hair on my arm stood on end. Something about the place was completely off. Something more than I was seeing. It was like every nerve in my body was telling me to get out. The first thing that hit me was the smell, like hot copper. The air was thick and heavy, almost kind of muggy, hot and humid, despite it being midwinter and snow covered every inch outside. The floor plan was all wrong. I mean, doorways leading to nothing but brick walls and hallways that just ended abruptly. Trees were growing through the walls and ceiling like they just phased through everything. I opened one of the doors and it led outside despite being a normal room door with a number. There was an elk there, standing still, completely frozen. I had this look of pure terror on his face, but it wasn't looking at me. It was looking past me, like it could see something behind me. Something I couldn't see. Another officer called out to me, and in the brief moment when I looked away, the elk disappeared. And I don't just mean walked away. The tracks walked up to the doorframe and just they ended there. Everything went to shit after I went to the second floor. I just wish I hadn't gone up. I really wish I hadn't. When I went up, it had no roof. The walls ended slightly above my head. I heard crows above me, and I looked up into the trees that had gone through the building. God, they were all up there, over 100 of them, up in the branches, writhing, moaning in pain. Every tenant of apartment 451 was up there, alive, suffering. Some look as though their skin had been peeled from their flesh. Most of them were missing limbs, pieces of their bodies, all ending in straight edges, as though they'd been cut off in one straight motion. I saw her up there, too. What was left of her. She'd been cut cleanly in half, just above the hips. Her guts dangling down. Crows were pecking at them. I called her name. She turned her eyes to meet mine as she mouthed for me to help her. I took a step back and my foot sank into something soft. I looked down to see a man half sunken into the floorboards, his skin translucent. It reminded me of that other one that we'd found encased in stone. He screamed, and they joined him, screaming in this deafening unison. And it got foggy out of nowhere, just appeared, and in seconds I couldn't see 5 feet in front of me. That's when the building began to shake violently. It nearly threw me to the ground, but I caught myself. I knew what it all meant, so I headed for the exit as fast as I could. I got called out to the others to hurry, to get out. And as I exited behind one of my coworkers, my foot snagged on the door frame. I fell hard, knocking the wind straight out of me, but the worst part was that blaring horn. It felt like someone was holding a train horn right next to my ear. I held my hands to my ears. Just as soon as it started, it fell silent again. When I rolled over onto my back, the building vanished once more, and my foot that had been caught in the doorframe, it was gone. Didn't bleed, didn't hurt. My leg just ended in a straight edge right above my ankle. I looked around. I noticed that only the officer who'd exited before me remained. The other three, they hadn't made it in time. I knew them well. They'd had families. They'd been good men. They didn't deserve to never see their children grow up, never to grow old. Look back at all they'd accomplished. He took me to the hospital. They couldn't explain it any more than we could. It wasn't cauterized. It was just an open wound, yet didn't bleed. I found her post. I'm writing this in her honor. She was right. People need to know. My apartment 451 wasn't the first. And I doubt that it'll be the last. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do the second part of this. This is so short. I can do the next part to this one too. I think it's only 3 parts, I think. Oh. Yeah. Yep. Check up there. Do one more. I was driving out one night deep in the sticks. Through a patch of dead air, the monotony of the road and the static of my car's radio lulled me as my eyes felt heavier and heavier. Staring up at the stars through drooping eyes, and my ears were pierced by a deafening sound emanating from the radios. Like this cacophony of human screams. So many people begging for help. I veered to the side of the road, completely caught off guard, just as it had come to an end. And just as it had come, it ended. Leaving me in near silence as the radio just quietly hummed. I went home that night, and as I lay there unable to sleep, I thought about what had happened. Wondered if I had picked up a stray signal from someone who needed help. The next day I went back to the spot, guided by the screaming that projected from the radio. I'd come prepared in case someone out there was injured. I also brought a portable radio, determined to find the signal, and find its source, So I did. I followed it as it got louder and louder until I reached its source. This large hole on the ground. I could hear soft cries coming from within. Horrified, I now knew someone was injured down there. And I had to help him, right? So I tied a rope to a nearby tree and I began my descent into its depths. The cave was humid, it was wet. Water was dripping down from the ceiling. The air was filled with this metallic smell like corroded pennies, right? breeze ran through the cave, carrying with it an orchestral symphony of agony. I began to walk deeper when I walked on something that clinked. There was a set of keys with a tag. It read, Apartment Building 426. Followed by, like, this address. From a city I knew that didn't exist. So as I walked deeper in, I soon found where the screams and moans of agony were coming from. It was, I don't know, at least a dozen people fused into the walls, the ceiling, the floor of the cave. One man completely fused into the stone wall, his face just frozen in an expression of terror. I still remember the horrible sound of grinding stone on stone as his eyes shifted to meet me. There are others half fused to the stone wall, crying in pain for help. Some had limbs missing, perfectly cut off, single straight edges. No blood, although the stumps didn't seem to be cauterized. One man was on the floor in a fetal position. Half of him just sunken in, right? Half his face looked up at me and he began to speak to me in barely legible words. You have to help us. Please, for the love of God. Please. His pained murmurs quickly grew into a frantic screaming. My wife! Where's my wife? You have to help her! You have to save her! And when he went quiet again, a woman's voice called out a name from the depths of the cave. When he heard it, they both erupted in these agonizing wails. It was the sound of two people who'd had their last of their hopes stripped away from them in an animalistic pain sobbing that echoed on the cavern's walls. His arms shot up, clamping down on my leg, painfully. You have to get me out. I can't go back. Please don't let me go back. I grabbed his arm and his skin, it just shifted under my grip like wet clay. I pulled, but he wouldn't budge. I pulled and I pulled, and his arm socket popped wetly as it dislocated. His arms tore off like wet paper. When his arm gave way, I fell backwards, smashing my head against the stone. I passed out. When I woke up, the cave was silent. I was the only one there. So I climbed out and I called the police. The park rangers met me at the hole. They told me the police had deferred the situation to them. The cave had been silent for the past couple of hours as I waited for them to arrive. They went down briefly before coming back up and in a frustrated tone announced that there was no one down there. They suggested I'd either made up the whole situation or had imagined the whole thing. As they escorted me out of the woods to my car, they told me to leave, told me to never come back. They said they'd arrest me if they ever saw me again. But as I'm sitting here writing this down, I know I couldn't have made it up. I still got the keys. Okay. That was really short. I don't know how we're gonna cut that together, but I'll leave that up to a Matt question. That's my editor, Matt, is gonna have to determine how he wants to do that one. Maybe we'll just release those two in one day. That might be good. Knowing my lazy ass, though, maybe I wouldn't. Yeah, so that's gonna standard. Yep, cool. Now we go to bar. La Bar. He'd be interested. He doesn't know I exist. If I could only have the chance. I'm right here. What do you mean? What are you talking about, Arcane? I'm recording stories, brother. I mentioned this earlier. I can only pay attention to one thing at a time. Hello, Lindy. Cryptid Panther Lindy, how's it going? Ecolos, hello. Luke Arnold. Hey, thank you. Thank you for being thanks for following for 5 years. Thank you, Arcane. Ashley 12, thank you. You're recording. Okay. So another building vanished. We got that one. Run a bar that serves. This is the next one. Next one is this one. Replying chat. Oh, I see. I see. I see. I see. That's the chat box. Story times. Oh, you guys who are like here on YouTube, who are like aren't the Twitch audience. Also, I was doing a I was narrating the new Silent Hill, Return to Silent Hill novelization on Twitch. If you guys want to see that or hear that, it is still available on the Twitch VODs. So if you guys go over to Twitch, you'll be able to see it. It's open to it. Yeah, dude, man, send me an email. Send me an email. I'm down to collab on stuff. I'm down to do stories together. This is part 2 from TJ Lee. The crazy and the creepy. Thank you, Nephilim. Okay. Let's get this one. Next one up. You ever meet those kinds of people that, from the outset, you just know that they're unhinged? Maybe it takes you a couple of minutes into the conversation before they suddenly mention they regularly infuse their boogers, nail clippings, and whatever other bodily shavings into a broth that they think gives them the ability to see into the future. Some other crazy shit. Well, a couple of days after the incident with Gomez, while I was still trying to figure out where to go from there, a patron I didn't recognize walked in. Maybe that's just because word was beginning to get around about the kind of place this was, or they just stumbled in here by accident. Either way, it was a tad strange, as were the moments leading up to it. Cheddar was restless, pacing around the bar constantly. He was never a big fan of thunderstorms or heavy rain, preferring the comfort of his blanket or his best friend's lab. Unfortunately for him, I was anticipating a delivery, and our regulars would need a top... Unfortunately for him, I was anticipating a delivery, and our regulars would need a top-up soon. I should clarify, while our top-shelf merch is our main attractor and isn't paid for with money, we do of course have lower-shelf brews that are chargeable. How else do you think we stay afloat? The delivery came, and I thanked the courier, a stack of various concoctions now waiting to be placed in their new homes. A regular had come in as the delivery was finishing and sat petting Cheddar, taking grateful sips of Pulse Thumper as they saw the courier out. The regular's name was Kraus, a short fellow with neat brown hair and thick glasses. He claimed to have once been an insurance fraud investigator that occasionally bent the rules to get bigger payouts. By bent the rules, I of course mean he started fires that couldn't be put out, though he was careful to ensure nobody was ever present at the time. There was still something to his story, though, and until he told me everything, I was destined to keep on seeing him and dish out cheap advice. "So you just straight up torching this motherfucker where I'm sitting?" he asked. "Oh, so you just straight up torch this motherfucker where I'm sitting?" he asked, a boyish grin over his face as Cheddar lapped up the attention. "Yeah, melted him into the floor before my partner did his thing. He deserved it," I replied. Bum 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 bum. Fuck me. melted him into the floor before my partner did his thing. Okay, so... Test. No. Okay, let's reopen. Yeah. Test. Okay, that's good. Yeah, melted him to the floor before my partner did his thing. He deserved it, I replied, cleaning away the 4 empty bottles Kraus had already had. Oh, you're a beast, Sully. Why would you get involved in this? Ain't like you to meddle. This place is meant to be free of judgment, right? I paused. He was right, and I was definitely not going to make any friends by doing this. But I looked at the ultrasound photo and the coat rack area before replying. We have a section of Lost and Found, as any bar does. But ours has been steadily accumulating more of the lost. It's becoming a concern. These people are going fucking missing. Kraus. I sighed. My shoulders felt heavy just thinking about all the people I'd gotten to know that were lost to the ether. I saw Letty in the way that she was, and, I guess fate intervened and the photo fell out and Gomez walked in. Kraus chuckled, finishing the bottle and grabbing his coat. Well, you're a stubborn bastard, so you're in for it for the long haul either way. I'll be right there with you. Look, I gotta shoot. But I want some of that Emporium whiskey next time I'm in, okay? Maybe then I'll tell you the rest of my story. He looked over at the grand booze flask sticking out of the crate, a royal seal adorning it, the label beneath reading, McGill's Distilled Black Sea Extract, a way to float or to sink. Your choice, and your volition. See your memories become clear. That's the McGill way. I smiled and nodded, waving him out as I began to put the bottles away and staving off the exhaustion I felt. The day wasn't done just yet. I put up our new sign. Mahogany and cheddar make everything better, above the wall behind me, pouring myself a glass of Emperor's Refuge, thankfully optional, alcoholic drink. It sat in a large oval container, a beautiful fluid preserved in amber with a small crown atop it that acted as a mixer. When the crown is rotated and the diamonds affixed correctly, it releases the extra ingredients into the container, allowing it to glow brilliantly with the shimmer of a diamond in the light. I stared at the bottle as I swirled the mixture in my other hand. The label, in a garish font befitting that of royalty, beamed back at me. Noble blood proudly present the Emperor's Refuge, for when even the most diligent man must rest and clear his mind. I don't know about that one, Chief. I'll take a rest all the same, I smiled. Cheddar walks up expectantly, his tongue hanging out as I down the drink with a heavy gulp. Yeah, you're royalty too, buddy. You're the Duke of Scraps and Barks. I pat him as he licks my hand. A brief moment of reprieve before the sound of thunder and the door being kicked open causes him to sit upright and bark, shattering the tranquility. Standing in the doorway and shrouded by a thick blue robe was a tall, thin individual that I'd never seen before. He didn't so much as move as he did glide towards the bar, not a drop of water leaving his person and staining the wooden floors. Cheddar moved behind me and whined. Something about this guy isn't right. This is the place. Yes. A raspy, well-spoken voice called from beneath the hood. It sounded as if the vocal cords had been shredded to bits and nothing but ribbons held on, threatening to tear at any syllable too elongated. It made my fucking skin crawl, but I'm a professional, and I held my nerve. You got it. Welcome to the space in between. I'm Sully. This big lug behind me's Cheddar. What can I get you? I opened my arms and gestured to look at our stock. The eyes do not move, but the face gets closer. As they do, I can see that the eyes are manic and wild, unblinking in their stare. If I look close enough, I dare say they were even shaking. I wish to be closer to my lord. How does one do this? It asked, the stench of its breath now close enough to singe my nose hairs and set fire to my mustache by proxy. I leaned back slowly and took in his question. Doesn't quite work like that here, fella. You want top-shelf stuff, you need to bring me a story. I'll hear it out, help you pick the right drink for you on your first time. I sat back against the counter, determined not to go blind from the smell, and they began speaking again. So, what have you got for me? The figure wordlessly sat down on the adjacent stool, their form hunching over like a coiled snake and their eyes fixated on me even as the head beneath the hood dipped down. It was unnerving. I was a lost soul before I found godliness. I used to do as my body commanded without thinking of the consequences. If it urged me to burn something, I burnt it. If it willed me to hit someone, I hit them. If it compelled me to, well, I may not have seen the smile beneath the hood, but I could fucking hear it in their voice. And I didn't like where this was going, but hearing them out was part of the job, so I held my tongue. For the longest time, I did as I wished. But one day I grew too bold and my wings were clipped. I gazed upon the sun and saw the true face of salvation, the light shining through him and forcing the light within me up and out through my chest. The light inside is the path I needed to give myself purpose, but... He paused, the arms under his robes trembling as I sensed frustration building in him. The smell of stale water running through the whole bar, making me gag. But I have reached my limit. The sun in me is going dim. I heard about your establishment and the unique properties it possesses. So if I might divulge something to you, I will. But your concoction must do the job, my friend. I gave him the once-over, and beyond the obvious fact that he was cloaked and smelled worse than a corpse in the midday sun, there was something off about him. Maybe he knew something. I glanced at my top shelf and saw a bottle roughly the size of a skull sitting dutifully on the far end, waiting to be grabbed. It had a good weight to it, various tendrils forming hooks to hold on to, the base of the tendrils wrapped around a face with a look of abject terror permanently across the only visible eye. The other having the socket bored into by a thick black tentacle and exiting out of the mouth as a spout. A murky red liquid sloshed about as I set it down, the label reading, "The elixir of Nortia, the river of fate washing down your throat, never ceasing and singular in its direction." You take this, there's no going back. Not even sure what'll happen to you, so your story better be going somewhere. I'm not the religious type. I frowned, pulling a chalice off the shelf before me, pulling a chalice off the shelf behind me and filling it to the brim. The liquid congealing, laying perfectly still once poured as if frozen over. I kept it in front of me as I felt the unceasing stare bearing down on me, but I was undeterred in my direction. I was undeterred in my decision. Whenever you're ready. Got all the time in the world, Mr. I paused and waited for a reply, but instead I was greeted by that sensation of a smile, like I was being sized up. Venator will do just fine. Turn the light on here. He replied, eventually, his arms still in his lap and his posture unchanged. I must confess your hound makes me uneasy. Chance you could remove him until I finished partaking in this drink. Offense washed over me, but I held it in for the sake of the patron and the desire to see where this was going. I obliged and sent Cheddar to the back, knowing this was not my smartest moment. As I shut the door on him, smash echoed from the bar. Upon rushing around, I saw the bottle was in 1,000 pieces, and the remainder of the red liquid was fastening itself to the floor, soon to be a permanent stain. My apologies. I was reaching for the chalice, and I forgot how close it was. I would be happy to reimburse you. The eyes didn't leave my direction once. Did he stare at me the entire time I was putting Cheddar away? No matter. Your story will be payment enough, especially while I pick up these pieces. Go ahead, Mr. Venerator. I sighed, leaning down to begin the arduous and mundane task of cleaning up. 99% of a bartender's job. The other 1% split evenly between interesting stories and freaks like this guy. Remind me why I do this again? I really liked my first test. She was a delicate little thing whose mother had abandoned her at birth. The rest of the litter had cut her out. She was never going to survive. Master told me the light in her would be best suited being added to my own, but it had to be cleansed from her, so, like a dutiful pilgrim, I took the flames of purity to her and stripped the light from her flesh once the fur had melted away. He paused. I could hear the shiver from under the bar as he gasped. The screams were like a private performance. For me. I still get tingles now. I started picking up the bigger pieces, and in the reflection, I saw that Venerator had set back down the chalice, and that his eyes were no longer set on me. Unease set over me, but I continued to clean. What happened after that? Surely your master didn't just grant you a seat on the council, I quipped, hoping my humor would ease the tension, but it didn't. He told me I couldn't be present for the graduation ceremony, but I had a more important job to undertake. My second assignment was dull compared to the first one. I was to gain his favor by ensuring his actions were seen to the end. No matter what it... What it... He began coughing and hacking, pushing himself away from the table as the drink began to take effect. The elixir of Noria wasn't just a way to get closer to your chosen idol, metaphorically. It shifted you to be what they wanted. regardless of the circumstances. I had no idea what it would do to him once it took hold, but it was my chance to learn more, and I wasn't willing to let it go. As he curled over on the floor, I got to my feet and leaned over the counter to talk to him. I could see the exposed skin on his arms beginning to grow gray and the nails lengthening to form sharper claws. Your master, he did something, didn't he? Something you wanted to be a part of? The venerator didn't reply. He didn't even move, save for some light breathing. I'm still figuring out what he did and how the hell someone like you found this place. You don't think I realized what you are? Playing a dangerous game coming here in your condition, you know that? This isn't the first out-of-the-way bar you've been to, is it? Well, I didn't go out much. I wasn't the only unusual bar around, and my colleagues had been murmuring about a weird visitor. Strange hooded people asking for very specific top-shelf concoctions that they should have no idea about, with stories that seem far too strange to be real. I'd even known a few places to go dark not long after mentioning this, so I'd been mindful of newcomers since then. What did your master want with Letty? She's just an ordinary woman. She led a good life. Help me understand. I leaned down to pick him up, and I could see his body shaking. A weak laugh emanating from beneath the cloak. A hand appeared before I could react, and lifted me up off my feet with ungodly force. The frame now standing up and becoming taller as it does so, far taller than before. I kicked my legs, but I couldn't find any footing or area to reach. I was completely at his mercy. The voice no longer raspy as it spoke, but booming and guttural. She was a crucial part of the ascendancy. Reverence and disquiet saw the potential in her and told our master she was the one. They were tasked with taking her memory, while our master fed on her young, taking a light before it was a chance to glow, bringing extra brilliance to his hue. The venerator's eyes now filled with such joy, and for the first time I could see something beneath it. A swirling mass of tendrils running across scarred and leathery skin with exposed pink flesh, the nose stripped to the bone, his eyes hanging in jagged sockets. But my job was special. Master took my light and dimmed it just enough that I'd send out the signals for your bar to appear. Master said, this is how people locate you when they need you the most. I began sweating. My vision blurred. My chest felt hot as I gasped for air that wasn't coming. The feeling of malice seemingly pulsing through his arms and transferring to me. It was borderline palpable. His teeth were visibly shaking as he smiled. This is the face of an animal, not a person. I don't understand. Wait, is this right? It couldn't be. Oh, okay, yeah. I don't understand. I am but a pilgrim, so I need only follow. You tried altering the course of fate, and that, dear friend, was your biggest error. Master doesn't wish to have any educators. He has made his choice, and so should you. I felt the stabbing sensation of a tendril in my side, a hot, burning liquid beginning to break down my cells and push its way through my bloodstream. My hands felt numb. I stopped fighting, barely able to muster a whisper. You wanted my story. Here it is, Sullivan. What message would you like me to tell the master? He called out with glee, pulling my body towards his face so he could hear my last gasps of air. Maybe by chance or by divine intervention, but Emperor's Refuge began to kick in. I felt the surge of energy fill my body and remove the semblance of pain for the briefest of moments. Anyway, I had to act quickly before I succumbed to the darkness. Gripping his arm as hard as I could, I shouted at the top of my lungs, Cheddar! Clean up! The sound of the back door swinging off its hinges broke through the air as Cheddar rose behind Venerator. The chunky mountain dog, a distant memory as he now stood on his hind legs, his upper half uncoiling like a snake and his eyes rolled into the back of his head. He was breathing heavily, his slobber a thick black and steamy hot. Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. His jaw opening far larger than a dog should be able to muster. The grip on my neck loosened as the malicious intent was now replaced by abject fear. Venerator turned his attention to Cheddar and looked visibly terrified. The last thing I saw before the subsequent darkness after being dropped to the ground was the unhinged form of Cheddar doing what he does best. Cleaning up. First went the head, then the limbs. The last thing was a tendril being graciously mopped up by Cheddar as I fell into unconsciousness. Emperor's Refuge taking me gratefully into its arms. Matt, this is scene change. This is a scene change. It's like, he passes out, then we go to a new scene. My memories flooded me while I was surfing in the darkness. Memories of a man I used to be. Of someone who could barely hold a sentence together without the voices overtaking me and driving me to total madness. Of a man who made one crucial mistake and found himself in a pub along the English countryside, greeted by an older woman who gave him a drink and listened for a while. How long has it been, I wonder? Sully? Sully, what happened to you? Pain riddled my body as I felt my consciousness being thrown towards the light at an alarming pace, the whiplash coming with a fresh level of pain that steadily rose the more aware I became. My stomach felt like it was rotting away, and I could no longer feel my legs. Cheddar whined, and the unfamiliar voice of a woman with dark skin and curly black hair became apparent as she kneeled over me, her eyes darting across my damaged body. What do I do, Sully? Tell me I'll do my best, okay? She said calmly, her bedside manner giving me even more cause for concern of my well-being. I tried to move, but the pain was so intense that I felt consciousness ripping away from me if I dared to venture too far. I cast my eyes to her and to the bar above me. Top shelf, middle, far at the back, silver bottle, the chain around it. Ice cold to the touch. I foolishly tried to move my arm on instinct, and again the pain tugged at my mind, reminding me of my error. The woman sprang to her feet and rummaged on the top shelf, the urgency causing her to knock a couple of bottles aside, much to my dismay. Sure enough, she got her hands on the silver bottle and brought it down to me. It's something I had not seen in many, many years. It was more of a teardrop than a standard bottle. The chains around it silver, even to this day. A small combination lock at the top by the cap. I whispered the number to her, and she pulled the cork off, a chill rushing through the room. She read the note on the side, a teardrop falling from the moon, with a trail effect burning off of it, as the logo reads, Professor Ambrose Ashton Smith's Silver Tear Potion. Your cycle shall not end so long as you keep this close. 1 glass for injury, 2 for death. Springing to action, she poured out 1 glass, and the bottle fell empty at the very last drop. She didn't register this, however, and propped the glass under my lips as I gratefully drank. The horrific cold chill flowing through my body and beating back whatever the hell Venerator had injected me with. After a few minutes, I felt the feeling in my body return, and I began to get to my feet, still a little woozy, but thankfully none the worse. Oh, looks like you get a drink on me, I chuckled. My side still a little sore, and the tear ruining my side still a little sore, and the tear ruining my blazer. Thanks, by the way. To whom do I owe my gratitude? She stretched out a hand, and I took it, a firm grip meeting me as she flashed a grin. Detective Georgia Halpin. Someone put in a call that there was an incident here, and, well, here I am. The woman took a seat at the bar and rested her head in her hands, smiling in bewilderment as Cheddar sat at the foot of the smiling in bewilderment as Cheddar sat at the foot of the bar, panting and focused on me. "You really okay? The hell was in that drink?" Favor from a long, long time ago. Wouldn't be able to use that again. I was really hoping it'd come in handy during an epic battle of some kind, but hell, I'd never go anywhere. So, I guess it is what it is. I put the bottle away in a small box underneath the bar and began to properly take in Halpin. She was in her late 20s, athletic, sporting a smart, casual attire that suggested she took her job seriously, but enjoyed being sociable. A definitive uptake from Mr. Sewer Nightmare earlier on. Her hair was tied back in a bun with a long golden pen in the center. "So how does this place work? How much do I need to fork out for you to bend an ear?" she asked coyly. The flash of pearly whites as I reciprocated. "You just need to tell a story, but since I owe you," I trailed off, realizing what I was actually saying, but she caught on quickly. "Since you owe me, you've got to tell the story. Bet you didn't think that would happen when you woke up this morning, huh?" She laughed, her eyes scanning the shelves behind me for something that took her fancy. "Well, you show me something, I'll show you something. Sound fair?" Her eyes resting on a black and white bottle in the shape of a bed. Her eyes resting on a black and white bottle in the shape of a bed stool on its end, with a person fast asleep on top. The cork in the center of their chest. I obliged, grabbed it from the shelf, and set it down in front of her. The label reading, "The Thought Collective presents Emporium Brand Black Whiskey, with a dash of pensive. Relive those golden moments in the black of night." Not a bad choice. It'll either bring clarity to your mind or make everything feel like it's in murky waters. It can be a hell of a journey if you're not careful, I said, uncorking the bottle and letting the smell of ginseng and walnuts waft through the air before fetching a large mead tankard and pouring the contents sideways. The black liquid left the container, coming out clear as crystal when hitting the tankard, black particles bubbling beneath the surface until the end of the pour, when a dark froth bubbled up at the top. I slid it over to her and gave her a nod as she took a sip, her eyes closing in enjoyment as she let it fill her. She spun her hand around, signaling me to begin talking. "All right, fine, here goes," I sighed and fetched Cheddar a slab of meat while talking, learning from before and opting to keep the detective in my sight the entire time. I sort of fell into this business. I wasn't always the suave, handsome, charming, obviously humble bartender you see before you. I was once just a fucked up kid trying to find his way. She finished her sip with a gulp and smiled, wiping her mouth and looking intently at me and nodding. Everyone goes through those phases in their lives when they have absolutely no clue what they're doing, right? Mine just lasted from 10 to 30 and saw no sign of slowing down as I fell into my late youth. I just felt lost, like I belonged nowhere. So I made people pay attention to me whichever way I could. If that meant lashing out, oh, so be it. Bad publicity was just fine by me. I shook my head. Being on the giving end of these was not my idea of fun, but a promise was a promise. But eventually, all our demons catch up to us, and I got in deep with a mistake that I made, and I was given a choice. Do this job or rot. So I chose the job, and here I am. The end. I held my arms up and let them fall to my sides before shrugging. Your demons catching up to you, huh? Yeah, I'm sure Gomez de Stefano did as well, Halpin nonchalantly declared, before taking another gulp of the drink and wiping her mouth, locking eyes with me. How much of what you just said was bullshit, Sully? I smirked. She was quick on her feet. Enough that you can't seem to figure it out. How'd you know my name? Why are you really here? She finished her drink, slamming it down on the table, before taking a walk in the bar foyer, looking at the photos of past events that we'd put on and the notes grateful patrons left behind. Hey, Sully, Thanks for having me for that long weekend. I have no idea how things got the way they are, but the drink you gave me was the best. Eternally grateful, Don Bellum. Sullivan. Our time together was irreplaceable. The drinks exquisite, and your wit sharp enough to cleave me in two. I will hold this time in my heart, for you pulled me out of the darkest pit, and with one drink, made it so I had wings. I hope to see you once more someday, my comrade. Maximilian Wentworth. Sully, you know what this means to me? Everything else has already been said. Thank you. Give Cheddar the biggest hug for me, okay? Catherine Letty. Oh no, this one looks new. So many grateful patrons that you've amassed quite the following here, haven't you, Sully? I assume that's why Gomez found his way here a couple of nights ago? She turned to look at me, eyes narrowed. We haven't seen him since. Nobody has. Even asked some of your regulars, Miss Letty here. Nobody had answers for me. How oddly protective. Who sent you? You really concerned for someone like Gomez? I asked, feeling suddenly very on edge. She laughed bitterly at the notion. Don't be silly. That vile prick was a foot soldier and a greedy one at that. No, I'm here because you clearly have no understanding of your boundaries, and if violence won't make the line in the sand clearer, maybe fear will. She opened her palms out and clenched her fists. Pity, really. I like this drink. But temperance finds its work is never done. Without a second to respond, she began punching her stomach over and over until the drink she consumed moments ago poured out of her like a black cloud through gags and belches. Began to form a haze that quickly turned into a cloud. And in it I could see figures moving around as the image became clearer and an apartment room could be made out. It was a dark apartment room with a row of plants in the corner, sitting dutifully and waiting for water. A bunch of baby toys littered the floor, a stuffed animal ripped to pieces and cast aside. I didn't want to see this. A hunched-over figure voraciously chewed on something's blood and viscera coated the floors. Its shoulder blades jutted out, and the hood barely covered the large bulbous head as it gnashed away. Two hooded members standing on either side and watching with vested interest. The bar began to darken, and even the clouds of cheddar. The bar began to darken, and even the sounds of cheddar barking were muted as the thing in the haze clicked its back, straightening up and beginning to turn. Huge black eyes falling upon me as mandibles clicked and blood covered. Pedipalps? Yeah. Huge black eyes falling upon me as mandibles clicked and blood-covered pedipalps shivered. Message has been delivered, my lord. Temperance has served you. The light beckons, Alpin called, unseen amidst the smoke and haze. I knew whatever the fuck I was staring at was beyond my weird I knew whatever the fuck I was staring at was beyond any weird story, gruesome, tall, or bizarre encounter that I'd had to that point. It was something that, for the briefest of moments, created a fear in me that screamed to close the bar and move. Once you start something like this, you can't stop it. I knew that. There was something preying on my patrons. I couldn't ignore that. Still, in the moment, amidst those blackened clouds, I felt a sliver of the fear that so many victims had fallen prey to. But I was so worried would continue to befall them if I stood idly by when they came to me for help. The black eyes shimmered and the voice resonated through me, a ringing out long after the warning was delivered and I had been left in the dark bar. Cheddar sat with me on the floor as I stared at the empty bottle of Emperor's Refuge and lamented on the clarity it could give me. The words swelling and bursting in my skull. I'll see you soon. That's so good, dude. I did this story once for chilling. I'm glad that, like, I was able to get it to do on my channel, too. TJ Lee is really good. They've done, like, a good number of stories that, I had recorded in the past, so this is, like, a really good one. TJ Lee. Why is it an MP3 file? Export. Alrighty. Arcade, I appreciate that. You don't have to worry about the one gift subs. You don't have to worry about the... This is fine. You guys hanging out here helps me get work done. Because, like, you guys keep me working on things so I don't get distracted and, like, pull open a game or something like that where I'm actually gonna fuck around with, like, some kind of something I'm not supposed to do while I'm recording. Is that Ame? Ame! Yo, good win! Alright, we see you guys in here. That's awesome. You guys probably not even here anymore because I was, like, in the middle of that story when you popped in. Tales of the Yawning Portal? Dude, yeah. Oh my god, Miss Mad Hat. Dude, I miss you too. Yo, when are you gonna be able to play games again, dude? I'll send you Yap Yap right now. Me and Jen totally, like, dude, we miss hanging out. I miss the VR time. Died for like a year. I know. I hope you're doing okay. Next one is not part of a series. Let me get this done. I thought, no, this is the longest one I think I have. For today, and it's Tired but Alive. Game launches this weekend. Please link me the game. As well as your book from your current writing. I know you've sent me like samples of it before. Have you gotten everything? Have you gotten stuff published? Or Friday or whatever. Okay, not that they're also probably a thing probably this year. Oh, let's go, dude. Let me know when you're all published up. You have a do you have an audiobook guy? Do you need an audiobook guy? Back to finishing my stories soon, man. Yeah, I agree, Goodwin. I really need to. We'll talk. Okay, so we get that one done. Okay, I will take a look at that in just a minute, Vincent. Just sent me a text message. And I will check that one right after this one. Post links, it's killer in. Ah, shit. Can I not give you rights to post links? Put this here, killer in. Oh, shit. Yeah, I was looking at this. Yeah. How do I give you VIP? VI. Yeah, sure, why not? Is that the one? Is that the one? 12th. Oh shit. Okay. I'm buying in. I'm buying in, baby. I'll put this actually in here if I can post it in here, because then I think everybody could see it also on YouTube. Yeah, YouTube should be able to see that too. Buying into the game. Everybody check out this new game, Miss Mad Hat. Miss Mad Hat shows it. Also, I just want to say, my number one most used emote on Twitch is still your emote. My number one most used one is it's the Mike Wazowski, the single Cyclops eye. That one is my absolute favorite emote I've ever I've ever used on Twitch. It's my favorite. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Those of you on YouTube can see it directly in the middle of the screen there. It's my favorite fucking thing. Alright, I'm gonna go back to recording. I can still see chat, so I can still see chat. Yeah, I started streaming a bit again. Oh, what? Oh, okay, hang on. I gotta get my notifications turned on. So if I see you streaming again, I want to be there. Like I said, hit me up, Miss Mad Hat. We'll get Yap Yap installed or something, and like all of us could be able to like play games because we'd absolutely love to do Yap Yap. All right, from happy fun friend times to I thought my wife was suffering from postpartum psychosis. My wife is the smartest, most put together human being I've ever had the pleasure of knowing, and it baffles me. It baffles me how such an angel as her could settle for a mess like me. Not only did she agree to put up with me for the rest of her life, but she also decided that we should have a child. This amazing person who fucking killed it in university and ran her own business that was successful enough to keep more than 24 people comfortable, wanted to procreate with a cunt who barely even finished his GCS, with a cunt who barely even finished his GCSEs. It made no sense. But the thing about Sarah is that she's a stubborn bitch, right? So once she's made her mind up about something, it's very hard to talk her out of it. Not that I tried very hard to do so. Hey, while I was busy shitting enough bricks to build a house too big for us to afford, she planned out every single thing down to the most minute details. Her diet, how she'd exercise, how the birth would go down, what the kid's bloody room would look like. All was decided before the test even came back positive. It was like emasculating, to be frank, but my only job was to bring my dick along, and I'm sure I almost fucked that up too. She was kind enough to let me take care of her the best to my ability during the pregnancy. With all her planning, she'd forgotten to take into account the human person that she'd have growing in her belly during all that time, and the difficulties that come with that. It truly was one of the most terrifying things I've ever experienced. I mean, I feel like that anticipation built over the months until I could barely breathe. Sarah did her best to soothe me, but it felt silly to go whining to her about being nervous. She was the one doing the hard work. But when Alfie was born, all those nerves blinked away. Jumbled puzzle pieces of the world suddenly clicked together to finally form a picture that I'd been looking for. Before becoming a father, it was like I'd been standing in one of those hall of mirrors, right? Unable to figure out which way was forward, having to rely on Sarah's hand to guide me. But when I held him in my arms, for the first time, I was suddenly on a straight open path. The purpose I'd never been able to find for my entire life was suddenly right in front of me. And that feeling even survived him immediately releasing more shit from his ass than I think I'd ever seen before, all down the front of my clothes. Clothes I then had to go home wearing. I'm not going to pretend I was some kind of natural, right? Fucking things up is my number one talent, and I was still doing plenty of it. I was permanently exhausted, but I grew up spending entire weeks sleepless while grinding for rare gear in various video games, so I was trained to resist the weight of fatigue, but I turned out to be pretty damn good at being a dad. I can't I can't take all the credit. I mean, Sarah made sure that I'd studied a countless number of books on the subject back to front, but sitting with my son, I'd think back to all those times other parents had warned me. You know, they told me I'd resent the lack of sleep, that I'd be miserable for at least the first few months, if not years. But none of that turned out to be true. I mean, I was unbothered by all that shit. I had my son. Nothing else mattered. My wife, she had a harder time. She learned quickly that being a mother isn't like running a company, that the primary directive of all children is to shatter any and all, every plan their parents concocted, right? With all her research and preparations with the physical side, I don't think she ever guessed the kind of toll giving birth would take on her mental health. Some days she couldn't even get herself out of bed, feeling tired all the time. She couldn't work. I mean, I love Sarah, but if there's one thing she's terrible at, it's sitting still. So while trying to recover from having her insides ripped out, she was beating herself up for resting instead of single-handedly holding up the sky. I often found myself holding her, telling her that she was a good mom, reminding her how badass she was, while she felt like she was failing. It broke my heart to see my smart, confident wife crumble apart like that. It felt so fucking useless, not knowing the right words to say, though. As it shamed me to admit it, it felt good to be the one comforting her for once, even if I was shit at it, right? My mother suggested that maybe Sarah was suffering from some kind of postpartum depression. She explained what it was, telling me about how she'd gone through something similar after I was born. I managed to convince my wife to start seeking a shrink, which helped. I managed to convince my wife to start seeing a shrink, which helped. She still had her moments, but the color was returning to her, and she was able to get out of bed more, even leave the house, right? So one day, when Alfie was about a month and a half old, she came home from a day out with him looking on the verge of a breakdown. And I asked what was wrong. She practically collapsed into my arms. I almost lost him, she whimpered to me. After calming her down and putting Alfie to bed, I got the full story from her. Well, wait, there's no way he's a month old, right? Okay, there's no way. After, when it was about a month and a half old. All right. She took her eyes off him. It was a tiny, insignificant amount of time that turned out to be a travesty. She stepped away for maybe a minute to quickly grab something, and when she returned, he was gone. A frantic few minutes proceeded where she searched desperately, eventually finding him still in his pram, not too far away. I soothed her as she cried, telling her that one mistake didn't mean that she had failed as I soothed her as she cried, telling her that one mistake didn't mean she'd failed as a mother, but part of me thinks she never forgave herself for it. The story didn't quite sit right with me, with the pram rolling off all by itself, but I didn't want to interrogate her too much. My son was fine. That's what mattered. I just assumed the wheels on the pram hadn't locked properly or something, and maybe the wind blew or something bumped it. Now I know the truth. That was when it happened. That was the moment my life began to fall apart. Sarah started watching Alfie much more closely after that. a mother's guilt weighing heavy on her shoulders. She'd go running to him at any and every sound he made. I'd find her hovering above his crib, sometimes late into the night, watching him sleep. I noticed Alfie crying a lot more than he used to. He was never quiet by any means, but now it was almost constant. Sarah explained it to be hunger, that he was just growing. But I swear, some days she was feeding him every half hour. One day when I'd managed to convince Sarah to get some rest, I sat with Alfie in my arms, rocking him slowly, listening to his breathing. It was much deeper than before, much more strained, like the air scratched the insides of his throat on each exhale. Watched his chest move up and down with each labored breath, wondering just how a baby could eat so much and still look so skinny. The first visit to the doctor came when I walked into the baby's room to find Sarah propped up against the crib, half unconscious with blood leaking from her nipples. The mental image of Alfie laying asleep with crimson-stained lips still makes me shiver. The doctor couldn't find anything wrong with Alfie, giving us a few half-assed guesses, such as colic, suggesting we start using bottles if the feeding's too hard on Sarah's breasts. An air of judgment dripped from his words like venom. Sarah burst into tears on the drive home. We started feeding Alfie through bottles, something he took to without any difficulty, which I thank God for. Things seemed to be getting a little easier for a while, though we ended up needing to buy formula Things seemed to be getting a little easier for a while, though we ended up needing to buy baby formula alongside the breast milk because he was eating it all. I did the math once. Alfie was eating something over 10 times what a baby was meant to eat. We were spending hundreds of pounds on anything the little man would let down his throat, but he never seemed to gain weight. His skin still taut on the ridges of his ribs. After returning home with bags filled mostly with baby formula, completely forgetting at this point to get anything for me and Sarah to eat, I found Sarah sat in the middle of the living room, holding Alfie to her chest and crying. "I think he's sick," she managed to get out between sobs. Alfie's skin had turned a jaundiced yellow and felt rubbery, slick. When I finally managed to pry his eyes open, I found the same for them, the sclera now a murky, bloodshot brown. We took him back to the hospital, where we sat, unable to even breathe, as the doctors ran test after test after test after test after test. Enduring side eyes, whispered expressions of disgust. But they again didn't find anything. Nothing that could cause any of the symptoms. Even after monitoring him over several nights, the useless bastards couldn't find anything. Eventually, we just had to take him home. What the hell else were we supposed to do? Spend our entire lives in the hospital? Other than the yellow skin and the eating habits, there didn't seem to be anything else wrong. He wasn't in pain. He looked malnourished, but I could tell just by the void in my pocket that he was far from that. I just felt so fucking useless. Time was blending together at this point, whether due to the lack of sleep or the identical days. So I'm not exactly sure how many weeks it'd been since me and my wife had slept in the same bed, but I think Alfie was about 4 months old. We were on a schedule of shifts. One of us would sit with Alfie, feeding him over and over, while the other person stole a few hours of darkness. One time I had run out of bottles, but didn't want to wake Sarah. She was coming apart at the seams. We both were. It was agony to see her like that. This woman I thought could take on the whole world, now with frazzled, unkempt hair, sagging skin, permanently roomy eyes. Permanently roomy eyes. We hadn't even washed our clothes in weeks. I don't think she had a single shirt that didn't have bloodstains on the chest. I wanted Sarah to have at least one full night's sleep, so I let Alfie suckle on the tip of my finger, hoping that it'd delay the mind-breaking wailing by just a few more minutes. And it worked. The silence was so blissful I began to nod off myself. But just as my eyelids made my vision flicker, a sharp pain shot through my hand and woke me right back up. I yelped, yanked my hand from Alfie's mouth, almost throwing him off me on instinct. Immediately he began screaming, the sound cutting into my eardrums with a similar pain to what I'd just felt in my hand, but I was unbothered, my attention absorbed entirely by the bead of blood trickling down from the tip of my index finger. Sarah and I had basically stopped speaking to each other unless it was about Alfie. No more giggle-filled conversations about the most ridiculous things, no more romantic dinners and inside jokes, no more intimacy, no more intimacy, emotional or physical. No more love. Just two zombies funneling milk into a screaming infant, like insects whose sole reason for existence was to feed their queen. I stopped on the doorstep after a shopping trip once, my forehead pressing against the door as I listened to Alfie's screams pierce through the walls like bullets from a machine gun. I could hear it throughout the entire street as I walked. I heard comments and complaints from just about every person who lived anywhere near us. I'm ashamed of it, but I thought about turning around, walking back to the shop, to a pub, anywhere. I wanted to not hear it for a while. It was strange. It had been just 5 months, almost nothing in the grand scheme of things, yet it felt like looking after Alfie was all I'd ever done. I could barely remember life before. I struggled to recall the names of friends I'd celebrated with when he was born. I knew going into it that having a kid was supposed to change your life, but I'd been utterly consumed by it. I tried to smother those disgusting thoughts, but they didn't relent until I heard Sarah inside. "Shut the fuck up!" along with glass shattering and thud. With my heart trying to burst out of my chest, I dropped the shopping at the door, and I rushed inside. I heard another smash before I reached the room. Finding glass and ceramics strewn across the floor, Alfie was on the kitchen table, screaming so hard his yellow face was turning shades of purple. "Shut up! Shut up!" Sarah kept shouting as she picked up another plate to throw. Her pale face was covered in tears and snot, and her neck and arms bearing scratches that oozed blood. I grabbed her and yanked her back, asking what the fuck she was doing. "I can't do it. He won't stop. He won't stop. I can't. I hate him," she gasped when she realized what she had said, dread tightening around her pupils before she burst back into tears. I sat her down in the living room before returning to Alfie, doing everything I could to get him to finish the 2 bottles Sarah had been trying to give him. It took me almost an hour to finally get him to quiet down. I put him to bed and quickly rushed back to my wife, hoping we could talk in the 5 minutes of quiet it bought us. Sarah sat on the sofa, rocking back and forth as she cried, her hands balled at her ears with clumps of hair that she'd ripped out. I crouched down in front of her, placing my hands on her bouncing knees. "Can you look at me?" I asked. She shook her head rapidly. "I can't do it, Jack. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to fix it. I wanted to hurt him." "But you didn't." I cut her off. "He's fine." I caught myself because fine was the last word I'd used to describe any of this. "He's not hurt." I didn't know what else to say. Sarah was the capable one. Sarah was the one with the answers. What the fuck could I do? Eventually, I found the words. I suggested that maybe we needed some time to ourselves. I could call my mom, ask her to watch Alfie for a bit, and we could go out together, or stay in, or do anything we wanted. Feel like people again. She shook her head and tearfully argued that it wouldn't be right to dump Alfie on anyone, especially my arthritic mother, who would have had to drive down from Scotland. Because that's Sarah. A stubborn bitch. She'd rather die than let someone else carry her problems for her. Trying to think of something else, I realized that in all the stress of looking for Alfie, she stopped seeing her therapist. So, I suggested that she start going again, and she sobbed harder, murmuring to herself about being a terrible mother. I held her until Alfie started crying again. A few days that melded together later, and Sarah had a meeting with her shrink. I encouraged it, but also dreaded having to be alone with my infant son. His screams bursting through my eardrums as I mixed formula until my fingers ached, but much to my surprise, a little bit after Sarah left, Alfie was quiet. It took me some time to realize, my fatigued body in autopilot, but at some point it hit me that the screaming I was hearing was just the echoes in my head, and Alfie was laying in his crib, perfectly tranquil. It terrified me at first. I thought he was sick or hurt, but when I picked him up, he was fine. I sat in my living room, rocking him in my arms. I watched the television like I used to just after he was born, like I used to before that day Sarah took him out. Though he was still bony and yellow, and fussed for feeding every half hour, he wasn't screaming. It racked my mind wondering what I did to calm him down, but the only difference I could find was Sarah's absence. My heart felt heavy at the prospect of telling her. I thought she'd read into it in a bad way. It had to be coincidence, but there was no way that she'd think that. My fears were in vain, though. When she returned home, she seemed okay, quiet, maybe a little cold. I chalked it up as the come-down from an emotional conversation, but when she looked at Alfie in my arms, there was something in her eye that almost made me wince. I don't really know how to put it into words. Not hate, not apathy, just suspicion. She seemed withdrawn for the rest of the day, not going anywhere near Alfie. Again, I just assumed maybe whatever she discussed with the shrink had left her emotionally drained. I considered asking her about it, but figured that wasn't the kind of thing that should be shared, even with me. I decided just to give her space and time to figure herself out. What I would give to go back and change that decision. Maybe we could have worked it out together. Maybe I could have helped her. She watched me feed Alfie and put him to bed, and when I pushed through my worry and expressed amazement at how he was still quiet, she just shrugged. She volunteered to watch over him that night to make up for leaving me alone and encouraged me to get some sleep. I suggested that maybe she should come to bed too, that maybe whatever it was that was wrong is now over. Maybe it was just colic. That he's quiet now, we'll be able to get some rest. That he's quiet now, and we'd be able to get some real rest. I was halfway begging. I just wanted to share a bed with my wife again. She shook her head, her dispassionate eyes analyzing our son's skinny yellow body as his prominent ribcage slowly rose and fell. Her arms crossed tight over her chest, her face struggling to keep the sneer suppressed. Apprehensively, I relented, recognizing the look of stoic resignation that she'd put on when making a tough decision, and knowing that look meant she'd made her choice. Sarah was always a stubborn bitch. Once she made up her mind about something, it was impossible to talk her out of it. So I went to bed. But even with the now months worth of sleep debt I'd accumulated, sleep was distant. I had this terrible sensation churning in my gut, an alien buzzing in my brain. An intuition. Even now, I don't think I could say for certain what it was. Some nebulous sensation, but it made the echoes of Alfie's cries in my head become deafening. I listened as Sarah went downstairs, a heaviness in her steps. I listened to the banging as she rooted around the piled-up dishes and bottles in the kitchen. I listened as she marched back upstairs, each thump making my breath hitch. Horrible stir roiling in my stomach like rocks in a washing machine. Eventually, the arcane feeling of my skull wanting to cave in became unbearable. I got up and with the slow, soft steps crossed the hall back to Alfie's room. I peeked back inside to see Sarah hovering over the crib like she would just after she had lost him on that day. My lips fought against my unease, trying to smile, thinking she was just wary of why Alfie was suddenly quiet. But then I noticed the knife in her hand. I stepped inside and quietly called her name. Sarah? She brought the knife up, and before my mind had time to truly process what I was seeing, I darted across the room. The blade came down on the edge of the crib as I yanked her backwards. Sarah, what the fuck? Alfie began screaming, as did Sarah. Get off me! Her arms flailing wildly, her elbow catching me on the chin. One hand with the death grip on the crib, the other thrashing out at my son with a knife. Sarah fought me. It's not him, Jack! Get away! Let go! Her yells were drowned out by my son's terrified wailing. We'd pulled the crib halfway across the room at this point, and Sarah would not let go, her legs kicking out and whacking against the crib, each flash of the blade making my heart jump. Wrapping one arm fully around her waist, I freed her hand and used it to pry her grip from the crib, digging my nails into the flesh of her wrist, making her cry out. When she finally let go, I swung her around and threw her out the door. She thrashed her knife as she fell into the hallway, slashing me across the forearm, making me stumble backwards. I looked back and met her terrified eyes. She looked at the blood pouring in rivulets down my arm, then the scarlet-stained knife in her hand. Jack, please, she begged between heavy pants. Please believe me, that's not Alfie. That thing is not our son. I kept my hands raised in front of me, non-threateningly. Alfie's screams dampening into quiet mewls. Please put the knife down. We can call the therapist, and we can talk about this, okay? It's gonna be all right. I promise. This was a promise I couldn't fulfill. Sarah shook her head, a deluge of tears pooling in her eyes, her jaw tight as the knife shook in her hand. It's not him, Jack, she whimpered, her eyes suddenly bulging open as she pointed with the knife, making me flinch. Look! Look what he's doing! She cried out. I cut my gaze to Alfie as he rolled onto his side, writhing in the crib. As helpless as I felt, letting out a couple cries, presumably upset by his mother's shouting. Controlling my breathing, I took a step towards Sarah, keeping myself between her and Alfie. Put the knife down, I pleaded. That's not Alfie! She shouted again, growing frantic, the woman I love now a rabid animal. That's not my son! My eyes kept darting to the door, which she must have noticed, suddenly becoming quiet, her face sharpening with determination. After a moment that felt like an eternity, I dashed forward. Sarah moved to block me, but I punched her in the face, sending her sprawling out into the hallway again, stunning her long enough to slam the door shut. I had just enough time to pull a wardrobe over to block the door before Sarah slammed herself against it, her mournful wail shattering something deep inside of me. She hammered against the door, the metallic thuds as she slammed the knife against the wood. Jack, no, please, it's not Alfie, please listen. It's a monster, it took him. Jack, please let me in, I can show you. I grabbed my phone and called the police, my voice shaking as I described a scene I didn't want to believe was really happening. The time I sat there with my son, Sarah begged me to open the door, begged me to realize that thing in the crib was not my son. It felt like an eternity. One I assumed would be repeated for me endlessly when I reached hell. I cried my fucking eyes out when I heard them kick in the door and drag her away. People told me all kinds of reasons and excuses, mental breakdown, psychosis. I didn't care about that. I didn't care about the why or the how. The pain that comes from fighting the belief that the woman you loved for the most of your life is actually a monster is something words can't define or assuage. My wife was gone. Now all I had was my son. Nothing else mattered. After trying to explain that to the police, the same thing she told me. After trying to explain to the police the same things she told me, Sarah was put in a psychiatric facility. I tried to visit her a few times, but all she'd do was scream at me, pleading to find Alfie and kill the thing that stole his place. Eventually, it became too painful to see her, so I stopped going. I abandoned her in there. I betrayed my vows by abandoning the person who showed me what it's like to live. Alfie stopped crying almost completely after that. He'd whine when he wanted feeding every 30 minutes, but other than that, he was quiet. Made me wonder if Sarah had been doing something to him to make him the way that he was. Maybe she'd been hurting him or poisoning him. I read up on Munchausen syndrome by proxy. Read up on postpartum psychosis, just about every other disorder I could find. Not a day went by where I didn't break down sobbing. I wanted to give up. I wanted to fade into the cloud of darkness that had encompassed my life. Like a stone sinking into the sea, but I couldn't. So I put the pain into caring for my son. Into finding the strength to do all the things that had once been shared between the two of us. I switched off all those parts of myself that Sarah had once neutered. I switched off all those parts of myself that Sarah had once nurtured until the only thing I had the capacity to feel was a father's love. My mom was insistent she'd come down to London to help me, but I fought her off. Every time she offered it, I'd become almost nauseous. Every time she offered it, I'd become almost nauseous at the prospect, like my body was repulsed by the idea of not doing this alone. At the possibility of what happened to Sarah happening again somehow. I think the only reason I still answered her daily calls was because if I didn't, she would want to appear at my doorstep unbidden. I can't recall how much time passed between Sarah's meltdown and the day I collapsed. Must have been months, might have been years. Time for me is a melange of hazy splotches. I remember just before I collapsed, I put Alfie in his high chair in the kitchen, and I stepped into the living room for something. And I remember I remember waking up on the floor. My cheek prickled against the crusty carpet, sticky blood growing cold on my face. I struggled to find my senses, my body fighting off consciousness to reclaim some of my deteriorating mind. "Are you dead already?" chuckled a breathless voice so gravelly the speaker sounded in pain. When my eyelids finally found the strength to flutter open, my hazy gaze was absorbed by a tall, thin figure hovering over me, watching me. I writhed and groaned, my limbs refusing to listen to my brain's signals. I managed to lift my arms and roll onto my stomach as a deep laugh filled the air like chlorine gas, making my blood icy in my veins. I smelled blood and feces, and I could taste dirt. Blinking moisture into my eyes and clearing my throat, the dream vision disappeared with a pitter-patter in the kitchen. And when I lifted my head, I was alone. Great. I'm psycho now, too. I pulled myself up and sat against the sofa, my bones throbbing as I watched my hands tremble. My head was bleeding. Suppose I'd hit it when I fell. At the time, I assumed it was exhaustion and the stress getting the better of me. I needed help. I warred with myself, practically begged myself to call my mom and ask her to save me like she always would. But the thought of her face made me want to vomit. I knew I should go to the doctor, but again, the idea fought me. The prospect of describing my situation to anyone made me angrier than I'd ever been before, strings of violence tugging at my mind. Thinking back to when we'd taken Alfie to the hospital made me hate my wife even more than I'd grown to. I cried, feeling almost completely alone in the world, completely alone with my only son. Completely alone with only my son. I finally found the strength to stagger upstairs, finding Alfie in his crib. When he saw me, he giggled and reached up, a thin yellow hand to me. I looked down upon his frail skeletal frame, his rubbery, jaundiced skin, bloodshot yellow eyes with black irises, and for a moment, I was disgusted by the creature before me. But it was only for a moment. Alfie giggled and wiggled his arms again, and love filled my chest like an aggressive cancer. I picked him up and I cradled him, tears burning my cheeks as I laughed with him. He pawed at me and murmured the way he does when he's hungry. I carried him downstairs and let him watch me prepare the bottle of milk. Sat with him in the living room and let him ravenously devour every drop in the bottle, almost pulling it from my fingers several times. My breath caught in my throat, the warmth of adoration wrapping around me like a python coiling around a rat. When I pulled the rubber nipple from his mouth, there was a crimson smear left on it. I looked down at the blood stain in the carpet, realizing it was the same color. My heart sank into the ground. I tossed the bottle immediately and began examining him, running my finger along with the inside of his lips. Alfie stopped fussing instantly. In fact, he went deathly still. His eyes narrow with this calculation that seemed strange on the face of a baby. Even when I poked and prodded his gums, he didn't fidget. He just watched me. I hissed when a sharp pain cut into my finger. I pulled it from his mouth and watched blood bead on the tip. With my pinky, I folded his lips back and looked closely at the dark purplish gums in my baby's mouth. It felt like a winter wind washed over my shoulders as I stared down at the tiny needle-like points poking out. I blinked several times, wondering if maybe I'd hit my head harder than I thought. Maybe I was still dreaming, but... It was when I noticed how he was looking at me that the world went silent. His face was cold, stony. His eyes were filled with contempt, an expression an infant was not meant to display. "All right, mate, let's get you back in bed," I said, with forced cheer and a chuckle that I had to squeeze out of my diaphragm. I don't think he bought it. His icy stare remaining fixed on me until I closed the door to his room behind me. My heart was racing so fast I was worried I'd cough it up. My mind was a cacophony of noise, but there was one thing I couldn't stop thinking. Sarah's words. That's not Alfie. I closed myself in my bedroom in a panic. Couldn't be real. It must have been having a breakdown like Sarah did. It's a monster. That was my son. My fucking blood, my flesh, part of me. He was just teething. That had to be it. Wasn't he about that age? I couldn't remember. Why couldn't I remember how old my son was? I couldn't remember anything. I couldn't remember my friends' names. I couldn't remember my mother's address. I couldn't even remember where I'd bought the formula I'd been feeding him. Feeding it. No, this was insane. I was sleep deprived. Stressed from having my wife try to kill me and my son. I was having some kind of mental health crisis. I needed to finally get some help. I searched around for my phone and eventually, leaving my room to search the house under every pillow, and found it in the toilet. The screen smashed. Dead and unusable. I never brought my phone into the bathroom. Moving back upstairs, I peeked into Alfie's room. He was sat upright in his crib, watching me plainly, curiously. He never sat up before that. And I had a nasty realization settle in my gut. It knew. It knew that I knew. Like Sarah knew. I closed myself in my bedroom again and blocked the door, remaining hidden away until the sun rose the next day. Alfie started crying at some point, but after a while he realized I wasn't coming and stopped, remaining silent for the rest of the night. After a shit ton of Googling, I concocted a plan that I was sure certified me as a nutcase, because I had to be certain. Before I did anything, I needed to be 100% fucking certain. And when daylight turned the outside world into a blinding wasteland, reminding me of just how alone I was, I left the room to gather what I needed. As I put the things together, I felt stupid. Everything in me screaming that this was ridiculous. Alfie was my son. I was having a crisis, and I needed to stop. But there was something deep inside me that knew I had to do this. Once I had everything together, I made my way back to Alfie's room. He was laying in his crib, his skeletal chest pulsing with shallow breaths. I drifted through the room, very hesitantly turning my back on him as I laid everything out on the changing table. Then I began. I opened the carton and plucked up the first egg, cracking the shell on the side of the pot before dumping the content onto the floor beside my feet. Then I placed the shells into the pot and began to stir. I did it again and again. On the third egg, Alfie laughed, making me freeze while I listened to the creaking of the crib as he moved. I repeated the absurd action until the contents of nearly a dozen eggs covered the floor, my socks soaked with yolk. I then placed the empty carton on my head and took the pot in both hands and began tossing the eggshells like you would an omelet. Alfie laughed again, and then it happened. "Why are you doing that?" A strained, harsh, gravelly voice cut through the silence like a lightning bolt. My eyes burned and vision blurred as tears threatened to drown me. Sarah was right. She was right. And I didn't fucking listen. My entire body trembling with fear, I placed the pot filled with eggshells onto the changing table. I didn't look at it, I just, as calmly as I could manage, walked out of the room and into my bedroom, piling half the furniture in front of the door to give me the time to type this up. Alfie's been crying louder than he ever had before. The noise like sandpaper raking my brain, but now he's suddenly stopped. I'm not sure if I'm losing it, but I'm certain I just heard the door handle jostle. There's an occasional creak now on the wall, on the stairs, the floorboards, as if it's moving around the house, trying to be quiet, waiting for me to come out. I'm not sure exactly why I'm writing this. I mean, maybe someone could use this to see the signs I missed. Maybe I just hope at least one person in the world won't think I'm an evil piece of shit for what I'm about to do. Maybe I'm just using this to delay the inevitable. And once I've done what I know needs to be done, I'll come back and I'll type up an update with what happened. Sarah, if you're reading this, I'm sorry. I'm so fucking sorry. Oh, nope. There we go. That's all she wrote. That was a great one. It was really good. I arrived at the stream, hence why I've not heard the first half. Oh, I got you. Someone get this baby a steak. Alright, boys. I hope everybody has a good rest of their day. I'm going to be ending the stream here. These ones all got to go off to editor, and I need to get, like, visuals and things like that. So, I will get all this done. For those of you who are watching on Twitch, thank you. Make sure you hit follow, so you can catch me doing more of this shit. Though you guys watching on YouTube, check out my Twitch, which is twitch.tv/MrCreepypasta, in case that's surprising to all of you. And these will show up probably sometime either this week or next. So, thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you guys for listening. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and as always, sweet dreams.